1890, Nebraska Territory. Clara Walsh was waist-deep in the Platte River, soaking wet and furious, when she heard the laughter. She whipped her head around, water streaming from her hair, her uncle's oversized work clothes plastered to her body. The man on the riverbank was trying not to laugh. Trying, and failing spectacularly. His shoulders shook. One hand covered his mouth, but his gray eyes danced with amusement. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark stubble shadowing his jaw and a black cowboy hat pushed back on his head. Even through her embarrassment and anger, she noticed he was devastatingly handsome. She'd been trying to cross on the stepping stones, trying to keep her disguise intact. The disguise that had gotten her this far, that had let her claim her uncle's homestead as his nephew instead of his niece. Women couldn't claim land alone in Nebraska Territory, so she'd become Charlie Walsh instead of Clara. And now, she was stuck in the river, her boots full of water, her dignity somewhere downstream. The stranger finally lost the battle and laughed outright. The sound was rich and warm, and it made her face burn hotter. She tried to climb out, slipped, and went under completely. When she surfaced, sputtering and gasping, he was doubled over, one hand braced on his knee. Clara saw red. She grabbed a handful of water and mud from the riverbed and hurled it at him. It splattered across his chest and face. The laughter stopped. He straightened slowly, wiping mud from his cheek. For a moment, she thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then, his mouth curved into a dangerous smile. Before she could move, he'd waded into the river. She tried to scramble back, but her waterlogged clothes made her clumsy. He grabbed her arm to steady her, and suddenly, they were face to face, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. He was still smiling, but something had shifted in his expression. His hand was warm and strong on her arm. Then, hoofbeats thundered in the distance, and his smile vanished. He pulled her behind the cover of the riverbank's overhang, one finger to his lips. His body was tense, alert, dangerous, in a way that made her heart race for entirely different reasons. Through the cottonwood trees, she saw riders. 5 men, wearing badges that glinted in the late afternoon sun. Leading them was a man in black, sitting ramrod straight in his saddle. Even from this distance, she felt the cold menace radiating from him. The stranger beside her had gone completely still. She looked at him and saw something in his face that made her breath catch. Fear. Controlled, but real. The riders passed, heading east along the trail that paralleled the river. Neither Clara nor the stranger moved until the hoofbeats faded completely. He released her arm and stepped back, putting careful distance between them. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "You should get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death." She became acutely aware that her disguise was ruined. The wet fabric clung to curves that no boy would have. He'd know. He had to know. But he turned his back, giving her privacy, and walked to his horse tied in the trees. He returned with a bundle and held it out without looking at her. "There's a line shack about a mile north. You can change there and dry off by the fire. I'll keep watch." Clara took the bundle. Dry clothes, too large for her but warm. Who were those men? His jaw tightened. Trouble. The kind you don't want to meet. Who are you? He finally looked at her, and she saw the weariness in his eyes. The kind that came from running too long. Noah Mcallister. And you're not a boy named Charlie Walsh? Her heart stopped. How did you... Your uncle talked about his niece Clara whenever he came to town. Said she was smart and stubborn and determined to make something of herself. He paused. He died 3 months ago. Heart gave out. I'm sorry. The grief hit her fresh, sharp and unexpected. She'd known, of course. The lawyer's letter had been clear. But hearing it from someone who'd known her uncle made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Noah's expression softened. He was a good man. He would have wanted you to have his land. But not like this. Not by pretending to be someone you're not. Clara lifted her chin. Women can't claim homesteads. I had no choice. And I'm an outlaw, running from a corrupt sheriff. Looks like we both got secrets. He gestured toward the north. That line shack. Go. Get warm. Then we need to talk. Because those riders will be back. And Sheriff Lockhart doesn't take kindly to people who get in his way. Part 1. The Nord or supposed to tea, one spas, placed around her. The menting this foy, where there are not her ham. Bliss place where a lost whiles white, ow lap tired. Cone like granding it didn't shit out of that thing. Call it how might has done, all the crying the player or spoons the twice. The line shack was small, but solid, built to shelter shepherds during harsh Nebraska winters. Clara changed behind a tattered blanket Noah had strung up for privacy, her fingers numb and clumsy with cold. When she emerged wearing his spare shirt and pants, both comically large on her small frame, he'd already built a fire in the stone fireplace. He didn't look at her directly, keeping his gaze carefully neutral. She spread her wet clothes near the fire and sat on the rough wooden bench, wrapping her arms around herself. Now that the adrenaline was fading, she was shaking. From cold, yes, but also from fear. Noah handed her a tin cup of coffee, strong and bitter. She wrapped her hands around it gratefully. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the cottonwoods. Finally, Noah broke the silence. Sheriff Cornelius Lockhart. That was him, leading those riders. Clara looked up. The traveling preacher? Noah's mouth twisted. He calls himself that. Rides from town to town, preaching hellfire and salvation. Got himself elected sheriff 2 years ago on a platform of moral righteousness. He spat the words like they tasted foul. Truth is, he's the most corrupt man in the territory. Uses his badge and his Bible to control people, steal land, and line his pockets. She thought of the man she'd glimpsed, sitting so straight in his saddle. There had been something cold about him, something that made her skin crawl. What does he want with you? Noah set down his coffee and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He wants me dead. Or better yet, hanged publicly as a lesson to anyone who'd stand against him. Clara's breath caught. Did you? What did you do? His gray eyes met hers, steady and honest. I witnessed him kill a homesteader who wouldn't sell his land. Man named Thomas Brennan. Had a wife and 3 kids. Lockhart shot him in the back, then claimed Brennan drew on him first. Made me sign a statement saying I saw Brennan pull his gun. And you refused. I refused. So now I'm wanted for the murder Lockhart committed. He's got connections, Clara. Judge, mayor, half the businessmen in Omaha. My word against his is no word at all. He rubbed his face tiredly. Been running for 6 weeks, staying ahead of his hunting parties. Barely. Clara's mind raced. This was worse than she'd thought. She'd come to Nebraska with one goal: claim her uncle's 160 acres, build a home, make a life. She'd been so focused on that dream that she hadn't paid attention to local politics or power struggles. Now she was sitting in a lined shack with a fugitive, wearing his clothes, and the man hunting him had seen them together. Or had he? The riverbank had hidden them well. Maybe they'd been lucky. As if reading her thoughts, Noah said quietly, "They might have seen my horse. Lockhart's thorough. He'll come back to check every hiding spot within 10 miles of where we were." We. He'd said we, as if they were in this together. Clara set down her coffee cup. "I should go. You've helped me enough. I don't want to bring trouble to your door." Noah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I don't have a door. And you're already in trouble, Clara Walsh. You claimed land under false pretenses. That's fraud. Lockhart finds out. He'll use it against you. Take your land, maybe put you in jail. He's done worse to women who crossed him." The fear she'd been pushing down surged back, cold and sharp. She'd been so careful, so sure her disguise would hold. "How do you know about my claim?" "Your uncle filed his will with the land office before he died, named his niece Clara as his heir. But the claim was registered 2 weeks ago under the name Charlie Walsh. Doesn't take a genius to put it together." He paused. "Lockhart's smart. Mean and smart. If he's looking into land claims in this area, and he is because there's good water rights on several parcels, he'll figure it out too." Clara stood and paced to the small window. Outside, dusk was deepening into night. Stars were beginning to appear in the vast Nebraska sky. Her uncle's land was 5 miles west of here. A simple soddy with a barn and a well. She'd spent 2 weeks making it livable, planting a fall garden, preparing for winter. Her home. Her dream. Everything she'd worked for. And now, it might all be taken away. She turned back to Noah. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Sympathy. Maybe. Understanding. "What do we do?" The question came out smaller than she intended. Noah stood and walked to the fireplace, staring into the flames. The orange light carved shadows across his face, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the weariness around his eyes. "We survive. We stay ahead of Lockhart. And we figure out how to prove he's a murderer before he destroys us both." Clara's hands trembled. She clasped them together. "How?" He looked at her then, and something fierce and determined burned in his gray eyes. "The homesteader he killed, Thomas Brennan. His wife is still alive, living with her sister in Lincoln. If we can get her testimony, combine it with mine, maybe we'd have enough to bring to the federal marshal. Lockhart's power is local. Federal law might be different." It was a thin hope, but it was hope. Clara took a shaky breath. "That's 3 days' ride from here. 4, if we're careful and stay off main roads." Noah crossed his arms. "It's dangerous, Clara. Lockhart's got men everywhere. We'd be riding through territory he controls." She thought of her soddy, her garden, the life she'd started building. Thought of her uncle, who'd believed in her enough to leave her his land. Thought of Thomas Brennan's widow and 3 fatherless children. Sometimes doing the right thing meant risking everything. She met Noah's gaze steadily. "When do we leave?" Something like respect flickered across his face. "Dawn. We'll need supplies, and I know a place we can get them without being seen." "But Clara," his voice dropped, became serious. "Once we start this, there's no going back. Lockhart will know you're helping me. You'll be an outlaw too." Clara thought about that. About the careful life she'd planned. The respectable homestead. The quiet existence. About all the rules she'd already broken just to claim what should have been hers by right. Maybe she'd been an outlaw all along. She straightened her shoulders and looked Noah Mcallister in the eye. "Then we'd better not get caught." Part 209. Where there slowed the train he raked odds at us, she last around her. Be mentally this strike, where that a mother who said, "Bliss place where lost allows white, in the tout with entired." Combing that granding a didn't shout at that thing. Brallet halm I has done, alder calming in the planned or spones the tours the stride. Amen, rightin'. They left the line shack before first light, moving quietly through the pre-dawn darkness. Noah had saddled his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Smoke, and found an old mare in a nearby abandoned homestead for Clara. The mare was gentle, patient with Clara's less than expert handling. The supplies came from a cache Noah had hidden in an abandoned barn 3 miles east. Salted meat, hardtack, coffee, blankets. He moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before, who'd lived on the run long enough to know what mattered. Clara watched him work and felt a strange mixture of fear and something else. Something warm that settled in her chest when he checked her saddle twice to make sure it was secure. When he made sure she had the warmer blanket. They rode west first, then north, staying off the main trails. The Nebraska prairie stretched endlessly around them, golden grass rippling in the wind. The sky was vast and clear, the kind of blue that made you believe in possibilities. By midday, they'd put 20 miles between them and the river. Noah finally allowed them to stop near a creek sheltered by cottonwoods. Clara slid from her saddle with a groan. Every muscle ached. She'd ridden before, but never this long. This hard. Noah noticed her stiff movements. "You all right?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. Pride wouldn't let her admit how much pain she was in. He didn't push. Just handed her some jerky and hardtack. And they ate in silence, while the horses drank from the creek. Clara studied him in the daylight. He was probably 30 or 32, weathered by sun and wind. There were lines at the corners of his eyes, the kind that came from squinting at horizons. His hands were scarred, calloused from hard work, but there was gentleness in the way he handled the horses, in the way he'd helped her mount that morning, without making her feel incompetent. "You said you witnessed the murder," she said finally. "Where were you? How did you see it?" Noah's jaw tightened. He stared at the creek for a long moment before answering. "I was working as a ranch hand for the Brennan family. Thomas had hired me 2 weeks earlier to help with the harvest. Good man. Fair pay, decent food. Treated me like family." He paused. Lockhart had been pressuring him to sell. The land has water rights to a creek that feeds into the Platte. Valuable. Thomas refused every offer. Clara waited. sensing there was more. That day, Lockhart came to the homestead while Thomas was out checking fences. Talked to his wife, Mary. Told her the offer was final, that Thomas needed to accept or face consequences. Noah's voice went flat. Mary's a strong woman. She told him to leave. He didn't like that. The way Noah said it made Clara's stomach turn. What did he do? Nothing. Then. But when Thomas came back, Lockhart was waiting. They argued. Thomas told him to get off his land. Lockhart shot him in the back as he was walking away. Then he turned to me and said if I didn't sign a statement saying Thomas drew first, Mary and the kids would have an accident. Clara's hands clenched into fists. So you ran? So I ran. Warned Mary first, got her and the kids to her sister's place in Lincoln. Then I disappeared. He looked at her finally, and the pain in his eyes was raw. I left her to deal with everything alone. The burial, the land claim, all of it. Because I was too much of a coward to stand up to Lockhart. The self-loathing in his voice was palpable. Clara wanted to reach out, to touch his arm, to tell him he wasn't a coward. That choosing to live so he could fight another day was brave. Not cowardly. But she barely knew him. So instead, she said, "You're going back now. To make it right. That takes courage." Noah made a sound that might have been a laugh. Or stupidity. They rode on through the afternoon, pushing north. The landscape began to change. Rolling hills replacing flat prairie. They passed abandoned homesteads, victims of the harsh winters and harder economics. Each empty soddy was a reminder of how fragile survival was out here. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Noah spotted a small grove of trees near a creek. "We'll camp here tonight. Good cover. Water for the horses." Clara helped him unsaddle the horses and set up camp. Her movements were getting easier as her body adjusted to the riding. Noah built a small fire, careful to keep it low and smokeless. They ate more jerky and hardtack, washing it down with creek water. Not the most appetizing meal, but Clara was too tired to care. The night was cold, the autumn air sharp and clean. Stars emerged one by one. More stars than Clara had ever seen in her life. Living in the city before this, she'd forgotten how vast the night sky could be. Noah sat across the fire from her, his hat pushed back, his face thoughtful in the flickering light. "Tell me about your uncle," he said quietly. Clara wrapped her arms around her knees. "Uncle Robert was my mother's brother. He came west 20 years ago, filed his claim, built his homestead. He wrote to us every month. His letters were full of descriptions of the prairie, the sky, the freedom." She smiled at the memory. "My mother thought he was crazy, but I loved those letters. They made me want to come here, to see it all for myself." "Why didn't you?" "Before, I mean. My father wouldn't allow it. He had plans for me. A suitable marriage to a banker's son in Philadelphia." Her voice went flat. "I refused. We fought. He disowned me." Noah's eyebrows rose. "Over a marriage?" "Over my right to choose my own life." Clara poked at the fire with a stick. The banker's son was 45, already widowed twice. My father saw a profitable business connection. I saw a cage. She looked up at Noah. "So I left. Took what money I'd saved working as a seamstress and came west. Arrived in Omaha 3 weeks after Uncle Robert died. Understanding dawned in Noah's eyes. And you found out you couldn't claim the land. Women can't file homestead claims unless they're heads of household. Widows? Yes. Divorced women? Yes. But single women under 40? She shook her head. The land office clerk laughed at me. Said I should find a husband if I wanted land. Noah's jaw tightened. So you became Charlie Walsh. So I became Charlie Walsh. Clara threw the stick into the fire. I cut my hair, bought men's clothes, practiced walking and talking like a man. Took me 2 weeks to get it right. Then I filed the claim under my uncle's will, saying I was his nephew. They never questioned it. That took guts. She met his gaze across the fire. So did running from Lockhart to protect a widow and her children. Something passed between them in that moment. Recognition? Maybe. Understanding. They were both people who'd chosen hard roads because the alternative was worse. The fire crackled. The horses shifted in the darkness beyond the firelight. And Clara felt, for the first time since leaving Philadelphia, that she wasn't alone. Noah stood and added more wood to the fire. You should sleep. I'll take first watch. Clara didn't argue. She was exhausted. She wrapped herself in the blanket he'd given her and lay down near the fire, using her saddle as a pillow. But sleep was slow to come. She found herself watching Noah as he sat with his rifle across his knees, his eyes scanning the darkness. His profile was strong against the firelight, all sharp angles and shadows. He'd saved her today, not just from the river, but from blindly walking into danger. He could have left her, could have ridden on alone and been safer for it. Instead, he'd given her his clothes, shared his supplies, and warned her about Lockhart. Why? The answer came to her as she drifted toward sleep. Because he was a good man. The kind who helped people even when it cost him. The kind who saw someone in trouble and couldn't walk away. The kind she could fall in love with if she wasn't careful. That thought should have scared her. Instead, wrapped in his blanket, listening to the prairie wind and the crackle of the fire, Clara felt safer than she had in months. Part 3 Handman, where the supposedly changed Rekwats it was a sight, so last around her. The mentoring the story, where then a mother who said, Rus place where lost allows white, and the tout than tie-end. Combing that granding a didn't shout of that lane. Klaus all my has done, all their calming in the planned or spones the tours the stite. The meant provided. 3 days on the trail taught Clara things about Noah Mcallister that watching from across a campfire never could. She learned he was patient, teaching her how to read trail signs and spot good water before they reached it. He showed her how to move quietly, how to watch for dust clouds that might mean riders, how to listen to the horses because they'd sense danger before humans did. She learned he had a dry sense of humor, the kind that snuck up on you. When her mare decided to stop and eat grass in the middle of a creek crossing, Noah had looked at Clara's frustrated face and said deadpan, "At least she's got her priorities straight. Food, then survival." Despite herself, Clara had laughed. She learned he was thoughtful in small ways. He always gave her the warmest spot by the fire. Made sure she ate first. Checked her horse's hooves every night without being asked. And she learned that being near him made her heart do strange things. The morning of the 4th day, They were saddling the horses when Noah's hand brushed hers as they both reached for the same cinch strap. The contact was brief, accidental, but it sent electricity shooting up Clara's arm. She pulled back quickly, heat flooding her face. When she risked a glance at Noah, he was very deliberately not looking at her, his jaw tight. So she wasn't the only one feeling this pull between them. That should have made things easier. Instead, it made everything more complicated. They reached the outskirts of Lincoln late that afternoon. Noah had them stop in a grove of trees outside town. "We can't ride in together," he said, dismounting. "Lockhart might have men watching. We need to be careful." Clara climbed down from her mare, her legs steadier now after days of riding. "What's the plan?" Noah pulled a piece of paper from his saddlebag. "Mary Brennan is staying with her sister, Anna Hartley. Lives on Oak Street, near the church. I'll go in first, make sure it's safe. You wait here. If I'm not back in 2 hours, ride west and don't look back." Fear shot through Clara. "No." He looked at her, surprised. "No? We're partners in this, Noah. I'm not waiting in the woods while you walk into danger alone." His gray eyes searched her face. "Clara, if Lockhart's men are watching Mary's sister's house, they'll grab me the second I show up. No reason for both of us to get caught. Then we'll be smarter about it." Clara's mind raced. "I'll go first. I'm still dressed as a man. Nobody in Lincoln knows me. I can walk right up to the house, knock on the door, and ask for Anna Hartley. If there are men watching, I'll see them. If the coast is clear, I'll wave from the window." Noah's jaw set stubbornly. "Too dangerous. More dangerous than you walking into a trap? At least this way, we'll know." She put her hand on his arm, felt the solid warmth of him beneath her fingers. "Trust me." He looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Something shifted in his expression, something that made her breath catch. "I do trust you. That's the problem." The moment stretched between them, charged and uncertain. Then Noah stepped back, breaking the contact. "All right. But you see anything wrong, anything at all, you get out of there. Promise me." "I promise." He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Clara rode into Lincoln alone as the sun touched the western horizon. The town was bigger than she'd expected, with a main street lined with shops and businesses. People moved along the wooden sidewalks, going about their evening routines. Everything looked normal, peaceful. But Clara's heart hammered as she found Oak Street and located the Hartley house. It was a modest frame house with a small porch, painted white with blue trim. Curtains hung in the windows. A vegetable garden grew along one side. She tied her horse to the fence and walked slowly toward the porch, her eyes scanning the street. 2 houses down, a man sat on a porch smoking a pipe. Across the street, a woman swept her front steps. Nothing seemed out of place, but her instincts prickled. Something felt wrong. She climbed the porch steps and knocked. Waited. Heard footsteps inside. Then the door opened. The woman who answered was in her 30s, with tired eyes and graying hair pulled back in a bun. She looked at Clara with polite confusion. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Anna Hartley." "I'm Anna. What's this about?" Clara lowered her voice. I need to speak with Mary Brennan. It's about her husband. Anna's face went pale. She glanced quickly over Clara's shoulder at the street, then grabbed Clara's arm and pulled her inside, shutting the door firmly behind them. The house was small and neat, with a simple parlor and kitchen visible from the entryway. 2 children sat at a table doing schoolwork. A woman stood at the stove, her back to them. She turned at the sound of the door closing, and Clara saw the resemblance to Anna immediately. Mary Brennan was younger, maybe 28, with dark circles under her eyes and a hollow look that spoke of grief too fresh. "Who is this?" Mary asked, her voice wary. Anna looked at Clara. "He says he's here about Thomas." Clara pulled off her hat, letting her braid fall down. "My name is Clara Walsh. I'm traveling with Noah Mcallister. He's waiting outside town. He sent me to make sure it was safe." Mary's hand flew to her mouth. "Noah? He's alive? We heard Lockhart had caught him. Lockhart's been hunting him, but he stayed ahead." Clara moved closer, keeping her voice low so the children wouldn't hear. "He wants to testify about what he saw. He thinks if we combine his testimony with yours, we might be able to bring Lockhart to justice through the federal marshal." Mary sank into a chair, her face crumpling. "It won't work. I've tried. I went to the marshal's office in Omaha 3 weeks ago. They wouldn't even let me file a complaint. Said Sheriff Lockhart was a man of God and a respected lawman, and I was a grieving widow making wild accusations. The hope Clara had been carrying cracked. They wouldn't even listen? The marshal's deputy is Lockhart's cousin," Anna spoke bitterly. "This whole territory is in his pocket. He's got connections everywhere." Clara felt the weight of defeat pressing down on her. They'd ridden 4 days, risked everything, for nothing. But then Mary looked up, and something fierce burned in her grief-dulled eyes. But there might be another way. Thomas kept records, dates, amounts, every time Lockhart came by trying to buy the land. He even wrote down the threats Lockhart made. I've got the journal hidden. If we could get it to someone outside Lockhart's reach, someone with real authority. "Like who?" Clara asked. Anna and Mary exchanged glances. "There's a territorial judge coming through next month. Judge Harrison, from Washington. He's here to investigate corruption in the land office. If we could get Thomas's journal to him, along with Noah's testimony." It was a thin thread of hope, but it was something. "Where's the journal now?" Clara asked. Mary's face paled again. "Still at the homestead, hidden in the barn. I was too afraid to go back for it. Lockhart's men watched the place." Of course they did. Nothing could be simple. A sharp knock at the door made them all freeze. Anna moved to the window and peeked through the curtain. She went white. "It's Deputy Henderson, Lockhart's man." Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. "Is there a back door?" "Kitchen," Anna pointed. "But Clara, if he sees you leaving, then I'll go out the front." Clara pulled her hat back on, tucking her braid under it. "I'm Charlie Walsh, looking for work. I knocked on the wrong door." She opened the door before anyone could argue, stepping out onto the porch. The deputy was halfway up the walk, a tall man with a cruel mouth and cold eyes. "Evening," Clara said, making her voice lower, rougher. "Wrong house. Sorry to bother you, ma'am." She tipped her hat to Anna, who stood frozen in the doorway, and walked down the steps. The deputy's hand moved to his gun. "Hold on there, boy. Where you from?" Clara's mouth went dry, but she kept walking, casual, unconcerned. "Out east, looking for ranch work. Heard there might be jobs around here. You got a name?" "Charlie Walsh." The lie came easier now, worn smooth by repetition. The deputy's eyes narrowed. "Walsh, that name's familiar." Clara's heart stopped. Had Lockhart connected her to the land claim? Did they know? She shrugged, praying her fear didn't show. "Common enough name, I reckon. Sorry to waste your time, deputy. Evening." She untied her horse and mounted, fighting the urge to gallop away. The deputy watched her go, his hand still on his gun. Clara forced herself to ride slowly down the street, turning at the corner. Only when she was out of sight did she urge her mare into a trot, heading for the grove where Noah waited. He was on his feet the moment she appeared, his face tight with worry. "What happened? You were in there too long." Clara dismounted, her legs shaking now that the danger had passed. "Lockhart's deputy showed up. I barely got out." She told him quickly about Mary, the journal, the watching men. Noah's expression went dark. "The homestead, of course." He paced, thinking. "It's 40 miles from here. We could ride through the night, get there by dawn." "The deputy made me." Clara's voice shook. He recognized the name Walsh. He's going to tell Lockhart. Noah stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her, seeing the fear she was trying to hide. He crossed to her in 2 strides and put his hands on her shoulders. "Hey, you did good. You got the information we needed and got out safe. That's what matters." His touch was warm, solid, anchoring. Clara looked up at him and saw not just a man on the run, but someone who believed in her. Someone who saw her strength. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Me too." His thumb brushed her shoulder, a small gesture of comfort. "But we're going to get through this. Together." The word hung between them, full of promise and possibility. Together. Not alone anymore, not running separately, but side by side. Clara found herself leaning into his touch, drawn by the warmth of him, the steady strength. His eyes darkened, and she saw the moment his gaze dropped to her mouth. He was going to kiss her. She wanted him to kiss her. But he stepped back instead, clearing his throat, putting careful distance between them. "We should go, before that deputy starts asking more questions." The moment shattered, leaving Clara aching with want and frustration. But Noah was right. There would be time for this later. After they'd cleared his name. After they were safe. If they survived that long. They rode through the night, pushing the horses as much as they dared. The moon was 3/4 full, giving enough light to navigate by. The prairie stretched endlessly around them, silver and shadow. Clara had never been so tired in her life. Her body ached. Her eyes burned. But she kept riding, because Noah kept riding, and she wouldn't be the one to slow them down. Somewhere around midnight, they stopped to rest the horses. Clara slid from her saddle and nearly collapsed. Noah caught her, his arm strong around her waist. "Easy," he murmured. "You're doing great." She leaned into him for just a moment, drawing strength from his solid presence. Then she straightened and stepped back. "I'm all right." He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Just handed her some jerky and his canteen. They sat on the grass while the horses grazed. The night was cold and clear, the stars impossibly bright. Clara had never felt so small, so insignificant under that vast sky. And yet, with Noah beside her, she also felt braver than she'd ever been. "Why did you do it?" she asked quietly. "Why did you help me at the river? You could have just ridden away." Noah was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "My sister was like you, determined, stubborn, desperate to make her own way in the world. She wanted to be a teacher, but my father said women belonged in the home. They fought. She ran away." His voice went rough. "I never saw her again. She died of fever in Chicago, alone, because she had no one to help her." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. When I saw you in that river, soaking wet and furious and still fighting to keep your dignity," he shook his head, "I saw Emily. I couldn't ride away. Not again." She understood then. He wasn't just helping her. He was saving the sister he'd lost. Clara reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, rough and warm. They sat like that, under the stars, not speaking, just holding on to each other. Finally, Noah stood and pulled her gently to her feet. "Come on. We need to keep moving." They mounted and rode on through the silver night. Dawn found them approaching the Brennan homestead from the east. Noah had them stop on a rise overlooking the property. The soddy and barn sat quiet in the early light, looking abandoned and forlorn. But Noah pointed to a spot near the tree line. "There. See that?" Clara squinted and saw it. A thin thread of smoke, barely visible. Campfire? Lockhart's men, watching, just like Mary said. Noah's jaw set. "We'll have to wait for dark. Go in quiet. Get the journal and get out before they know we're there." It meant a whole day of waiting, hiding, watching. A whole day for Lockhart's deputy to connect the dots and figure out where they were heading. But they had no choice. They found a ravine a mile from the homestead and made camp in the concealment of the rocks and scrub brush. Noah took first watch, while Clara tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the deputy's suspicious face, heard Lockhart's men closing in, felt the noose tightening. She sat up, pulling her blanket around her shoulders. Noah looked over from his watch position. "Can't sleep?" "Too much in my head." He moved closer, settling beside her against the ravine wall. His shoulder brushed hers. "Want to talk about it?" Clara leaned her head back against the rock. "What if we can't get the journal? What if Lockhart catches us? What if all of this is for nothing?" "Then at least we tried." Noah's voice was quiet but firm. "Sometimes that's all you can do. Try, and hope it's enough." She turned her head to look at him. He was so close, his face just inches from hers. She could see the individual whiskers of his stubble, the slight scar on his chin, the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. "I'm glad you were at that river," she whispered. His breath caught. "Clara, I know this isn't the time. I know we're running for our lives and everything's dangerous and complicated. But I need you to know." She swallowed hard. "I'm glad I'm not alone anymore." Noah's hand came up slowly, carefully, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his calloused palm cupped her cheek. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said roughly. "Smart and stubborn and so damn strong. I don't deserve you in my life. But God help me. I'm grateful you're here." Clara's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was clumsy, awkward. Neither of them quite sure how their mouths should fit together. But then, Noah's arm came around her waist, pulling her closer, and his other hand slid into her hair. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and necessary, like breathing after being underwater too long. Clara had been kissed before, by the banker's son her father had chosen, by a boy in Philadelphia who'd thought he could change her mind about going west. Those kisses had been practiced, polite, empty. This was different. This was fire and promise and connection. This was two people finding home in each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Noah pressed his forehead to hers. "We're going to survive this," he said fiercely. "We're going to get that journal, clear my name, save your land. And then—" He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "And then I'm going to court you properly, with flowers and Sunday dinners, and asking permission to hold your hand." Clara laughed, the sound shaky but real. "I think we're a little past asking permission. Don't care. You deserve to be courted. You deserve everything." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "I'm going to give you everything, Clara Walsh. If you'll have me." Her heart felt too big for her chest. "I'll have you, Noah Mcallister." They kissed again, softer this time, sweeter. A promise of what could be, if they could just survive long enough to claim it. Part 4 Hymn Night, where their supposed between he Reikgats bless, sie lässt around her. The mentioning this for, where the another hymn said, their rest place where lost to gals white, out with untiend. Combing that granding I didn't get out of that thing. Cloud how my has done, all their calming the planned or spones the tours the stite. Amen. Darkness fell slowly over the Nebraska prairie. Clara and Noah prepared in tense silence, checking their weapons, securing anything that might make noise. The plan was simple. Approach from the west, using the creek bed for cover. Get to the barn, find the journal, and get out. Simple, but not easy. Noah handed Clara his spare revolver. She told him she could shoot, and he believed her. But his eyes held worry as he made sure she knew how to load and aim. "If something goes wrong," he said quietly, "if I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back. Don't wait for me." Clara's jaw set stubbornly. "We're in this together, remember?" "Clara." "No." She met his gaze steadily. "I'm not leaving you. So let's make sure nothing goes wrong." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he pulled her close for a quick, fierce kiss. "Stay behind me. Stay quiet. And please, please be careful." They moved through the darkness like shadows, leading the horses on foot until they reached the creek. Then, they tied the animals in a thicket and continued on foot. The barn loomed ahead, dark and silent. The thin thread of smoke they'd seen that morning was gone now, but Noah had spotted the watcher's camp in the tree line. 2 men, maybe 3, taking turns sleeping. They'd have to be quick and quiet. Noah tested the barn door. It opened with a soft creak that sounded deafening in the night silence. They froze, listening. No shouts, no movement. Inside, the barn was pitch black. Noah lit a small candle, cupping the flame to hide the light. Mary said Thomas hid things in a box under the loose floorboard near the back stall. They moved carefully through the barn, feeling their way. The horses that had once been here were gone, sold or taken. Only the smell of hay and old leather remained. Noah found the loose board and pried it up. Underneath was a metal box, dusty and scratched. He lifted it out carefully and opened it. Inside were papers, letters, and a leather-bound journal. Noah flipped it open, angling it toward the candlelight. Thomas Brennan's neat handwriting filled the pages. Dates, conversations, threats. This is it, Noah breathed. This is everything we need. Clara felt a surge of hope so intense it hurt. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. Then a voice cut through the darkness. Well, what do we have here? Clara's blood turned to ice. She spun around to see 3 men standing in the barn doorway, silhouetted against the starlight. All 3 held rifles. Noah moved in front of Clara instantly, the journal clutched in one hand, his revolver in the other. Let us pass. The middleman laughed. Clara recognized his voice. Deputy Henderson. Can't do that, Mcallister. Sheriff Lockhart wants you bad. And he'll pay good money for proof you were here. We're not alone, Noah said, his voice hard. You shoot. My friends will hear. They'll come running. It was a bluff. Clara hoped Henderson couldn't tell. But the deputy just smiled. Your friends are dead. We found them in the ravine an hour ago. Nice try, though. Noah's whole body went rigid. Clara's mind raced. There had been no one in the ravine. Henderson was bluffing too. You're lying, Clara said, making her voice as rough and masculine as she could manage. Henderson's attention shifted to her. The boy can talk. Who are you, kid? Clara's heart pounded. Nobody. Just hired help. Is that so? Henderson took a step forward. Funny. We heard there was a Clara Walsh making trouble in Lincoln yesterday. Woman disguised as a man. His smile turned cruel. That you, girl? The other 2 men raised their rifles higher. Noah's hand tightened on his revolver. Clara could feel the tension in him, coiled and dangerous. He was calculating odds, planning his move. But there were 3 of them, and 2 of Clara and Noah. And Clara had never actually shot anyone before. Let her go, Noah said quietly. Your quarrel's with me. She's got nothing to do with this. She's hiding evidence and aiding a fugitive. That's plenty to do with it. Henderson gestured with his rifle. Both of you. Outside. Nice and slow. Sheriff's gonna be real pleased when I bring you in. Noah didn't move. Clara could see his mind working, looking for an opening, a chance. Noah, she whispered. Don't. He glanced at her, and she saw the desperation in his eyes. He was going to try something stupid and heroic. He was going to get himself killed, protecting her. Clara made a choice. She raised her hands, the revolver dangling from one finger by the trigger guard. All right. We're coming. Don't shoot. Noah hissed something under his breath, but she ignored him. She walked forward slowly, hands high. The deputies relaxed slightly, thinking they'd won. Clara dropped. The moment her knees hit the floor, Noah moved. His revolver barked once, twice. 2 of the deputies went down, crying out. Henderson's rifle swung toward Noah. Clara fired from the ground. She'd been aiming for his leg. She hit his shoulder instead. Henderson spun and fell, his rifle clattering away. Then, Noah was hauling her to her feet, the journal shoved inside his vest, and they were running. Out of the barn, across the open ground, Henderson's curses and shouts ringing behind them. Gunfire erupted. A bullet whined past Clara's ear. Another kicked up dirt at her feet. They reached the creek and tumbled down the bank. Noah pulled her behind cover, breathing hard. "Are you hurt?" "No." "You?" "I'm fine." He pulled her close, his heart hammering against her cheek. "That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen. Learned from the best," she gasped. More shouts in the distance. The deputies were coming, wounded, but not out of the fight. Noah grabbed her hand. "Run!" They ran through the creek bed, splashing through shallow water, branches tearing at their clothes. Behind them, the shouts grew louder. Someone fired another shot. Then, another. They reached the thicket where they'd tied the horses. Noah threw her onto her mare and vaulted onto Smoke. "Ride!" Clara didn't need to be told twice. She kicked her mare into a gallop, Noah right beside her. They burst out of the trees and onto the open prairie, racing through the darkness. The moon lit their way, bright enough to see by but too bright to hide in. Clara heard hoofbeats behind them. 3 riders, maybe 4, in pursuit. Noah leaned low over his horse's neck, urging more speed. Clara did the same, her mare responding gamely. But the deputies' horses were fresh. Slowly, inexorably, they began to close the distance. A rifle cracked. Clara felt the bullet pass somewhere to her left. "There!" Noah pointed ahead. A line of trees marked another creek. "If we can reach cover..." They raced for the trees. Another shot. This one closer. Clara's mare stumbled. For a heart-stopping moment, Clara thought she'd been hit, but the horse recovered and kept running. They crashed into the tree line. Noah pulled up hard, dismounting even as his horse slid to a stop. "Get down! Stay low!" Clara slid from her saddle and dropped behind a fallen log. Noah crouched beside her, his rifle in his hands now. The journal pressed against his chest, precious and deadly. The deputies burst into the clearing on the other side of the creek. 4 men, all armed, all furious. "Give it up, Mcallister!" Henderson shouted. His left arm hung useless at his side, blood dark on his shirt. "You got nowhere to run!" Noah didn't answer. He aimed carefully and fired. One of the deputies' horses reared, throwing its rider. The man hit the ground hard and didn't move. The other 3 scattered, finding cover. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the trees. Clara fired back, not really aiming, just trying to keep them pinned. Her hands shook, her heart hammered. This was nothing like practicing with targets. This was chaos and terror, and the very real possibility of death. A bullet smacked into the log inches from her head. Splinters flew. Clara yelped and ducked lower. Noah fired again. "We can't hold them here," he said grimly. "We need to move." "Where?" "They're between us and the open prairie. Downstream." There's rough country that way, ravines and canyons. We can lose them in the dark. It was a terrible plan, but it was the only plan they had. Noah grabbed her hand. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They ran, bent low, using the trees and shadows for cover. Bullets chased them. Clara heard a man shouting orders, heard the crash of someone coming through the brush behind them. They splashed across the creek and scrambled up the opposite bank. The land rose here, becoming rougher. Noah pulled her into a narrow ravine, and they ran along the rocky bottom, their boots slipping on loose stones. Behind them, the pursuit continued, but the terrain was slowing the deputies down as much as it slowed Clara and Noah. They ran until Clara's lungs burned and her legs screamed, until she thought she couldn't take another step. And then Noah pulled her into a crevice in the ravine wall, barely wide enough for both of them. They pressed together in the darkness, not breathing, not moving. Clara could feel Noah's heart racing against her back, could feel his arm around her waist, holding her steady. Footsteps crunched on rock. Voices echoed in the ravine, distorted and strange. Lost them, someone muttered. Can't have gone far. Spread out. Check every hole. The footsteps moved closer. Clara's hand found Noah's and gripped tight. If they were found now, pressed together in this crack in the stone, there would be no escape, no last-ditch heroics, just capture or death. A shadow passed the opening of their crevice, so close Clara could have reached out and touched him. She held her breath, prayed. The shadow moved on. Long minutes passed. The voices faded. The footsteps retreated. Still, Noah and Clara didn't move. They waited in the darkness, pressed together, silent and scared. Finally, after what felt like hours, Noah whispered, "I think they're gone." Clara sagged against him, every muscle trembling. "We made it. For now." Noah's voice was grim. "Henderson knows who you are now. Lockhart will be coming for both of us with everything he's got. We can't go back to Lincoln. Can't go to your homestead. Can't go anywhere he might think to look." Clara turned in the tight space until she was facing him in the darkness. She couldn't see his face, but she could feel his breath on her cheek, could feel the solid warmth of him. "Then where do we go?" Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Judge Harrison. Mary said he's investigating corruption. If we can get this journal to him before Lockhart stops us." "Where is he?" "Omaha. 3 days hard ride. 3 days with every lawman in the territory hunting them. 3 days with dwindling supplies and exhausted horses. 3 days of running, hiding, praying they'd survive long enough to make a difference. It was impossible. It was their only chance." Clara found Noah's face in the darkness, her hand sliding along his jaw. She felt him lean into her touch, felt his hand come up to cover hers. "Together?" she whispered. His fingers tightened around hers. "Together." They left the crevice before first light, moving carefully through the ravine. Their horses were gone, either taken by the deputies or scattered in the chaos. They would have to continue on foot. Noah led the way, using the stars to navigate. They walked through the pre-dawn darkness, stumbling over rocks, pushing through brush. Every sound made Clara's heart jump. Every shadow could be a deputy lying in wait. But the night remained quiet, empty. They'd lost their pursuers, at least for now. As the sky began to lighten in the east, they stopped to rest in a small cave. Noah checked their supplies. 2 canteens, still half full. Some jerky, the clothes on their backs and the weapons they carried. And the journal. The precious, damning journal that Thomas Brennan had kept. Noah opened it again in the growing light, reading carefully. His expression grew darker with every page. "What?" Clara asked. "It's worse than I thought. Lockhart wasn't just pressuring homesteaders to sell. He was stealing water rights, forging deeds, burning people out. Thomas documented everything. Names, dates, amounts of money changed hands. Lockhart's whole criminal empire, laid out in black and white." Noah looked up, his eyes haunted. No wonder he killed Thomas. This would destroy him. Clara felt cold despite the warmth of the rising sun. "Then we have to get it to the judge. Whatever it takes." Noah reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was gentle despite his calloused hand. "I wish I'd never dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me. I chose this." Clara caught his hand and held it against her cheek. "I chose you." Something fierce and tender crossed Noah's face. He leaned forward and kissed her. Slow and sweet, a promise that this wasn't the end. That they would survive this. That they would have a future together. When they parted, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "When this is over, I'm taking you home, to your uncle's homestead, and I'm going to help you build a life there. Plant your garden, fix your fences, make it into everything you dreamed of." Clara's throat tightened. "And you? Where will you be?" "Right beside you. If you'll let me stay." Tears stung her eyes. "I'll let you stay." They sat together as the sun rose, painting the Nebraska sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere out there, Lockhart and his men were hunting them. Somewhere, danger waited. But for this moment, they had each other. And that was enough. Part 5 in Mines, where they're supposed to train he requats bless, Celeste around her. The mentally the story, where that another who said, bliss place where lost lies white, and towel and tie-end. Combing that Grandinga didn't sit out of that thing. Close all-minded then, alder calming the planned or spose the tours the stride. Amen. They walked for 2 days, staying off the roads, moving through rough country where horses couldn't easily follow. Noah found a trading post run by a Cheyenne family, people he'd helped once before. They gave Clara and Noah food, water, and 2 horses in exchange for work, and Noah's promise to return the animals when he could. The Cheyenne elder, a woman with wise eyes and silver-streaked hair, looked at Clara for a long moment. Then, she spoke in English. "You carry something precious, and you are hunted." Clara nodded, too tired to lie. The woman touched Clara's cheek gently. "The man beside you is good, broken, but good. He will protect you, and you will save him. This is how it should be." Clara didn't understand, but she thanked the woman. They rode out at dawn on the fresh horses, heading northwest toward Omaha. On the 3rd day, they saw the city in the distance. Omaha sprawled along the Missouri River, bigger than any town Clara had seen since leaving Philadelphia. Smoke rose from factories. Church spires pierced the sky. And somewhere in that city was Judge Harrison. Their last hope, Noah pulled up on a ridge overlooking the approach to town. Lockhart will have men watching the roads. We need to be smart about this. Clara's mare shifted restlessly beneath her. Where would the judge be staying? The Paxton Hotel, most likely. It's where visiting dignitaries always lodge. Noah frowned. But we can't just walk in there. We look like outlaws. They'll arrest us on sight. Clara thought hard. We need someone respectable to deliver the journal for us. Someone Lockhart doesn't control. Who? Everyone in this territory is either in his pocket or too scared to cross him. An idea formed. Risky, but possible. Mary Brennan's sister. Anna. She's respectable. Known in Lincoln. If we could get word to her, ask her to come to Omaha. Noah considered it. That's 2 days for a message to reach her. 2 more for her to travel here. We don't have that kind of time. Then we find someone else. A lawyer, a newspaperman, someone with nothing to lose. Clara's jaw set. We didn't come this far to fail now. Noah looked at her, and despite everything, he smiled. You're amazing. You know that? I learned from you. They approached Omaha from the east, skirting the main roads. Noah knew the city, had worked here before his troubles with Lockhart began. He led them to a boarding house on the edge of town, run by a widow who asked no questions and took cash without requiring names. While Clara cleaned up as best she could, Noah went out to gather information. He returned an hour later with news. Judge Harrison is at the Paxton, like we thought. He's holding hearings all week on land office corruption. But Lockhart's already here. I saw him on the street, talking to the territorial marshal. Noah's face was grim. Whatever we're going to do, we have to do it fast. Clara paced the small room. Think. There had to be a way. Then it hit her. The hearing. If we can get into the hearing room, interrupt the proceedings, hand the journal directly to the judge in front of witnesses, they'll arrest us the moment we walk in. Maybe, but not before the judge sees the journal. Not before everyone in that room knows what Lockhart did. Clara turned to Noah. It's a risk, but it might be our only shot. Noah studied her face. You understand what you're saying. If this doesn't work, we'll hang. Lockhart will make sure of it. I understand. He crossed to her and took her hands. Clara, you could still walk away. Change your name again. Disappear. You've got your uncle's land. You could have the life you wanted. Clara shook her head. Not without you. And not while Lockhart destroys innocent families. She squeezed his hands. We finish this. Together. Noah pulled her close, holding her tight. She felt his heart beating against hers, felt the strength in his arms. I love you, he said roughly. I should have said it before. I love you, Clara Walsh. Joy and fear warred in her chest. I love you, too. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, like a man saying goodbye. But when they parted, his eyes held determination, not defeat. Then let's go make history. The territorial courthouse was an imposing brick building in the center of Omaha. Noah and Clara approached from different directions, trying not to look suspicious. Clara had borrowed a dress from the boarding house widow, transforming back into a woman for the first time in weeks. Her hair was clean and braided, her face scrubbed. She looked respectable, harmless. That was the plan. Noah waited near the side entrance, while Clara walked boldly through the front doors. The lobby was crowded with lawyers, clerks, and citizens, waiting for various hearings. Clara's heart hammered, but she kept her chin high. She found the hearing room easily. The doors stood open, and she could see Judge Harrison at the bench, a stern-looking man in his 60s with white hair and sharp eyes. Sheriff Lockhart sat at one of the tables, looking smug and righteous in his black suit. Clara's stomach turned, but she walked forward, clutching her small purse that held the journal hidden inside. A clerk stopped her at the door. "Hearing's in session, ma'am. You'll have to wait. I have evidence relevant to these proceedings." Clara's voice didn't shake. "Evidence the judge needs to see." The clerk looked uncertain. "You'll need to submit it through proper channels." "There's no time." Clara pushed past him, walking into the courtroom. Everything stopped. Heads turned. Judge Harrison looked up, frowning, and Sheriff Lockhart's face went pale, then dark red with fury. "Your Honor," Clara said, her voice carrying in the sudden silence. "My name is Clara Walsh. I have evidence that Sheriff Cornelius Lockhart murdered homesteader Thomas Brennan and has been running a criminal enterprise throughout this territory." Lockhart shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this woman is an outlaw and a liar. She's wanted for fraud and aiding a fugitive." The judge raised his hand. "Order." His sharp eyes fixed on Clara. "You have evidence?" Clara pulled the journal from her purse and walked forward, her legs shaking but steady. Thomas Brennan's journal, documenting 2 years of threats, extortion, and corruption. Names, dates, amounts, everything Sheriff Lockhart has done. The back door burst open. Noah strode in, his rifle in hand but pointed at the floor. Every deputy in the room reached for their weapons. "And I'm Noah Mcallister," he said calmly, "the man falsely accused of Brennan's murder. I witnessed Lockhart shoot Brennan in the back. I'll testify to it under oath." The courtroom erupted. Lockhart was shouting. Deputies were moving toward Noah. The judge was banging his gavel. Clara reached the bench and held out the journal. "Please, Your Honor, read it. That's all we ask." Judge Harrison took the journal. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. His expression grew darker. "Deputies, stand down," he ordered. "Nobody move." He looked at Lockhart. "Sheriff, sit down and be silent, or I'll hold you in contempt." Lockhart's face was twisted with rage, but he sat. For 10 minutes, the only sound in the courtroom was the turning of pages as Judge Harrison read. Clara and Noah stood together, hands clasped, waiting. Finally, the judge looked up. "This is damning evidence. If authentic, it details systematic corruption and multiple criminal acts." He looked at Noah. "You witnessed the murder of Thomas Brennan?" "Yes, Your Honor. Sheriff Lockhart shot him in the back on October 15th. Then, he threatened to harm Brennan's widow and children if I testified." "Lies!" Lockhart shouted. "I shot Brennan in self-defense. He drew on me." "Then why did you threaten Mary Brennan to keep silent?" Clara asked. "Why did you send deputies to watch her house and intimidate her?" Lockhart's mouth opened and closed. He had no answer. Judge Harrison set down the journal. "Sheriff Lockhart, you are hereby relieved of duty pending a full investigation. Deputies, you will escort him to a holding cell." Lockhart lunged across the courtroom, not toward the judge, but toward Clara. You ruined everything!" he screamed. Noah moved faster. He intercepted Lockhart, his fist connecting with the sheriff's jaw. Lockhart went down hard. Deputies swarmed them. For a moment, Clara thought they would take Noah too. But Judge Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold Lockhart only." Mr. Mcallister acted in defense of Miss Walsh. The judge looked at Noah and Clara. "You two will remain in Omaha until I've completed my investigation. If your testimony holds, and I believe it will, all charges against you will be dropped." Clara's knees went weak with relief. Noah's arm came around her waist, holding her steady. It was over. They'd won. That evening, Judge Harrison's clerk found them at the boarding house. "The judge has reviewed all the evidence. Mr. Mcallister, you're cleared of all charges. Miss Walsh, your homestead claim will be refiled under your real name. The judge has also issued warrants for 3 of Lockhart's deputies." After the clerk left, Noah and Clara stood in the small room, looking at each other. Free. They were actually free. "What do we do now?" Clara asked. Noah smiled. The first real smile she'd seen from him. "Now I take you to dinner. Somewhere with actual food and chairs and candles. Like civilized people." They found a small restaurant near the river. The meal was simple but felt like a feast after days of jerky and hardtack. They sat across from each other, hands clasped on the table between them, just looking at each other and marveling that they'd survived. "I meant what I said," Noah told her over coffee, "about coming home with you, about building a life together." Clara's heart swelled. "I want that. But Noah, you don't have to stay just because I love you?" He raised an eyebrow. "Clara, I'm not staying out of obligation. I'm staying because there's nowhere else I want to be. No one else I want to be with. You're it for me." She felt tears prick her eyes. "You're it for me too." Noah came around the table and knelt beside her chair. Right there in the restaurant, with the other diners watching, he took her hand. "Clara Walsh, I don't have a ring yet. Don't have much of anything except a horse I borrowed and the clothes on my back. But I'm asking anyway. Will you marry me?" Clara's breath caught. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, laughing through her tears, "Yes." He stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply while the other diners applauded. Clara didn't care who was watching. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into that kiss. When they finally parted, both breathless and grinning, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "I promise you, Clara, I'll spend every day of my life making sure you never regret this." "I could never regret you," she said fiercely. "Never." 2 weeks later, they stood on the porch of Clara's homestead, watching the sun set over the prairie. Noah had spent the days repairing the soddy, fixing the barn, helping Clara replant her garden for spring. He worked from dawn until dusk, and every evening they sat together on the porch, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. Mary Brennan had written to thank them. Lockhart was in federal prison awaiting trial. 3 of his deputies had fled the territory. The land office was being investigated, and several corrupt officials had been removed. Justice, slow and imperfect, but justice nonetheless. "I was thinking," Noah said, his fingers playing with Clara's hair. "We could add a room to the soddy, make it bigger before winter comes." Clara tilted her head to look up at him. A room for what? His eyes were soft, full of dreams. For the future. For the family we might have someday. If you want that. Clara's throat tightened with emotion. I want that. I want everything with you. He kissed the top of her head. Then we'll build it. Together. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. The prairie wind whispered through the grass. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Clara thought about everything that had brought her here. Her uncle's death, her desperate disguise, falling into the river and meeting a man who'd laugh at her misfortune and then risk his life to save her. All the running, the fear, the moments when she thought they wouldn't survive. And now this. Peace. Home. Love. Noah? She said softly. She said nor there was supposed to be me, let's say for self-times and luck around her. This and Lentors were not her handfriend, but were there in this place where a lost wabs bo kalogibes and tout and then tie it. I'm glad I fell in the river. He laughed, the sound warm and rich in the gathering darkness. So am I, Clara. So am I. He stood and pulled her to her feet, leading her inside their home. The soddy was small, but cozy. The fire in the hearth casting warm light across the simple furniture. Noah had hung a lantern by the door that first night, a beacon to guide them home. It glowed softly now, a promise of safety and belonging. Clara turned in Noah's arms, her hands resting on his chest. She could feel his heart beating, steady and strong. I love you, she said. I love you too. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. From that first moment at the river, when you threw mud at me with such fury in your eyes, I think I was lost. I just didn't know it yet. I knew, Clara admitted, when you gave me your blanket and stood watch so I could sleep. When you believed in me. When you fought beside me. She smiled. I knew you were mine. Always, Noah promised. He kissed her softly, sweetly. A kiss that spoke of devotion and forever. When they parted, Clara took his hand and led him to the table. Sit. I made stew. And before you ask, yes, it's actually edible this time. Noah laughed and obeyed, watching as she served them both. They ate together in the warm firelight, talking about their plans for the homestead, for the spring planting, for the life they would build here together. After dinner, they sat together by the fire. Clara curled against Noah's side, his arm around her, both of them staring into the flames. The night was quiet, except for the crackle of the fire and the occasional gust of wind against the soddy's thick walls. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't fallen in that river? Clara asked quietly. Noah was silent for a moment. I think about it all the time. If you'd made it across those stepping stones, if I'd ridden past without stopping, if we'd never met. He tightened his arm around her. We'd both still be alone, running from different things, but alone. I don't want to be alone anymore, Clara whispered. You're not. You never will be again. Noah tilted her chin up so he could look into her eyes. This is our home, Clara. This land, this life we're building. But more than that, home is wherever you are. As long as I have you, I have everything. Clara's eyes filled with tears, the happy kind. You have me. Always. They kissed again, slow and deep, the fire warming them as night settled fully over the prairie. When they finally drew apart, Noah stood and held out his hand. "Come on, let's bank the fire and get some sleep. We've got work to do tomorrow." Clara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Together, they prepared the soddy for night, moving around each other with the ease of people who belong together. Noah banked the fire while Clara checked that the door was latched. He blew out the lantern while she made sure their supplies were secure. And then, in the soft darkness lit only by the dying embers of the fire, they stood together in the home that was theirs. "Thank you," Clara said softly. Noah pulled her close. "For what?" "For laughing at me when I was in the river. For staying when you could have run. For loving me when I was pretending to be someone else." She laid her hand over his heart. "For seeing me, the real me, and choosing that." Noah covered her hand with his. "I'll choose you every day for the rest of my life. That's a promise, Clara Walsh. Soon to be Noah Mcallister." She smiled against his chest. "I like the sound of that." "So do I." They stood there, in the quiet darkness, holding each other, both marveling at how far they'd come. From strangers at a river, to partners facing down corrupt lawmen, to this moment of peace and promise. The prairie wind whispered against the walls. The fire popped softly. And Clara knew, with absolute certainty, that she was finally home. Not because of the land, or the soddy, or even the Nebraska Territory she'd dreamed about for so long, but because of the man holding her. Because of the love they'd found in the midst of danger and fear. Because of the life they would build together, side by side, for all the days to come. She looked up at Noah one more time. In the dim light, she could just make out his features, the strong line of his jaw, the tender expression in his eyes as he gazed down at her. "I love you," she said again, because she couldn't say it enough. "I love you too," he replied, "now and always." Morning came too soon, but Clara woke with a smile on her face. Noah was already up, building the fire, making coffee. He turned when he heard her stirring and smiled. "Morning, beautiful." Clara stretched and sat up. "Morning." He brought her coffee and sat beside her. They drank in comfortable silence, watching the light grow stronger through the small window. "What do you want to do today?" Noah asked. Clara thought about it. There was always work to be done on a homestead, but today felt different, special. "I want to walk the property with you, show you all the places Uncle Robert wrote about in his letters. The creek where he said the deer come to drink. The meadow where wildflowers bloom in spring. The old oak tree on the eastern border." Noah nodded. "I'd like that." So that's what they did. After breakfast, they walked hand in hand across the land that was theirs. Clara showed Noah every special place, sharing her uncle's stories and her own dreams for what they could build here. And Noah listened, really listened, adding his own ideas and plans. A bigger barn for more livestock, a windmill for the well, maybe a grove of fruit trees on the south side. They dreamed together under the vast Nebraska sky, two people who'd found each other against all odds, building a future, one hope at a time. By afternoon, they were both tired but happy, heading back to the soddy. Noah stopped suddenly and pulled Clara into his arms. "What?" she asked, laughing. Just wanted to hold you. Do I need a reason? No, she said softly. Never. They stood there in the middle of their land, wrapped in each other's arms, feeling the warmth of the sun and the promise of forever. This was everything Clara had come west for. Not just land or freedom, but love, partnership. A man who saw her strength and loved her for it. A man who would stand beside her through whatever storms came. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, building their home, their family, their life, one day at a time. That evening, as they sat on the porch again watching another sunset paint the sky, Noah said quietly, "Thank you for not giving up. On us. On this." Clara leaned against him. "Thank you for laughing at me in that river. If you hadn't, I might never have known what real love feels like." Noah kissed her temple. "Best day of my life. Falling in love with a stubborn woman who threw mud at me." Clara laughed, the sound bright and free. "Best day of mine too." They sat together as the stars emerged, one by one, in the vast Nebraska sky. The prairie wind was gentle tonight, carrying the scent of grass and earth and home. Clara thought about the journey that had brought them here. The fear, the running, the moments when survival seemed impossible. But through it all, they'd found each other. They'd found love in the midst of danger, hope in the darkest moments, and strength in partnership. Noah's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Ready to go inside?" Clara nodded. "Ready?" They stood together and walked into their home, the lamplight welcoming them. Noah closed the door behind them, shutting out the night and the past, keeping safe everything that mattered. And as Clara looked around their simple soddy, at the life they were building together, she felt a profound sense of peace. This was home. Not just the land or the walls, but this feeling, this love, this partnership with a man who'd risked everything for her, who'd stood beside her when the world seemed determined to tear them apart. Noah pulled her close one more time, holding her like she was precious. "I love you, Clara Mcallister." She smiled at the name, her new name. "I love you too, Noah, now and always." They had survived. They had won. And most importantly, they had found their way home to each other.